Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolf, and now you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And it's delightful to be back here with you. Last week, if you were listening, I was talking with Judy McLaughlin, who is a friend from Harvard University. A number of years ago, I attended Harvard, and Judy was a colleague and a classmate, and she now runs the program for university presidents. And these are presidents from many universities and colleges all across the world who come to Harvard for some seminars that help them understand how to embrace successfully the roles and responsibilities of becoming a new university or college president. Hopefully you got to listen to it. I thought it was a fascinating discussion. There were things that I know about leadership transitions that I was able to talk about, but some of the unique points of view about what happens with a university president, how they deal with boards of trustees, and how they deal with all the different constituencies that impact college life. Those are all pretty interesting points that I really didn't know a whole lot about until I had that conversation with Judy. But the most interesting part, I thought, was Judy has some familiarity with the new Harvard president, Larry Bacow, who is not initially a candidate for the spot. He had been Tufts president, Tufts University, and then had retired after 10 years, sort of retired. He then became a faculty member as part of Judy's program for new seminars, the seminars for new presidents. And he was not initially a candidate. He was actually on the selection committee. And as they were looking at the criteria for who they wanted for Harvard's president, after a point where they were talking to a number of candidates, and what they were looking for, they began to realize was present in the person, one of the people sitting on their board, and one of the people who was in that group on the selection committee, and it was Larry Bacow. And although he wasn't initially interested in being president, after a period of time, he was convinced that yes, he would take the job if they really wanted them. So it was a really neat story. You learn a lot about who the new president is. He sounds like a fantastic person. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, you can listen to it. Well, actually, I'm going to put it on the podcast probably later today, so you'll get a chance to listen to it on SoundCloud or iTunes or Stitcher, whichever one you're prone to use. So that was last week. This week, I wanted to open the ears to people who like to call in. If you're familiar with the show, thank you so much for being a listener. And I want to thank everybody who's tuning in, whether you're a regular listener or a new listener. The show I'm going to talk a little bit about, just to tell you a little bit about what it's about. But mostly, when I'm on the air, I like to have people call in who are challenged. I find that smart people who are challenged with situations in their life, sometimes professional situations in the workplace, having to do with colleagues perhaps, or bosses that are difficult or at least challenging in the moment, or people that work for them that they're finding hard to motivate, or have some potential that isn't being realized, or they're really technically smart, but they have some people issues and some difficult challenges in getting along with others, and you're trying to work with them and help guide them. So there's lots of different things that happen at work that sometimes are very challenging for people, and they're stuck. And when people are stuck, whether it's at work or at home, it's often because something emotional is happening. If it's at home, then perhaps you're having a difficult time reining in your adolescent son or daughter, keeping them under control, helping them to deal with the need to rebel and yet do it gracefully and skillfully and not painfully. Or perhaps you're struggling in a relationship with a partner in some form, whether marriage or otherwise, where your relationship is at a point where it's not working the way you'd like it to work. Or perhaps it's an aging parent. I mean, there are so many things that can happen anywhere in our lives that are stressful and are impactful, and we are often uncertain what's the best way to deal with some situations. And some situations are very complicated and really don't have so much as a best choice, but have a choice that's less bad, if you will. Anyway, the concept of the show is the idea that when we have something emotional that's happening to us, and we're impacted by our own emotions or the emotions of someone that's important to us for whatever reason, that we sometimes struggle with how to deal with that effectively. And the concept that I've introduced here, and why the show is called The Emotion Roadmap, is that we can change our own emotions, and we can also influence the emotions of others. We don't have to be stuck, if you will, with the emotions you're currently feeling. So if you've got something on your mind right now, this second, that's been going on for a while, and it could be for a long time, it could be something very recent, where you're not sure how you should proceed. You're really unclear about what to do next. And you've got some choices, you've thought about the choices, but none of them sound right to you. And you'd like to get some professional help. My professional background, for those of you who don't listen or regularly and have just tuned in for the first time, my background, real quickly, is I've been a family therapist many years ago. I've been a leadership coach for lots of years. I've been a counselor, a school counselor. I've worked as a faculty member, as an adjunct faculty member in a number of universities where I've taught courses on psychology and on emotional intelligence. And I'm considered by a number of people to be a pioneer in the field of something that's now called emotional intelligence. And so I've learned over the years how to use all these different experiences and competencies that I've developed to create what I call an emotion roadmap, which is to say that when you experience feelings that perhaps are important to recognize what they're telling you, it's always important to recognize what your feelings are telling you, but you realize that those same feelings are not helpful beyond informing you, and that you want to change those feelings to something other than what you feel now, to something that's more ideal to feel. You want to change your feelings from what they currently are to something that's better for the purposes that you have in mind. You want to be more clear on how to change your feelings, not only for yourself, but for someone that you might be dealing with. The idea of an emotion roadmap is to get you from the feelings you have to the feelings that you want. The feelings you have to the feelings that you want and need. And as one of the pioneers, if you will, in the field of emotional intelligence, I've worked with the early innovators, the people that first put forward this idea that there is such a thing as emotional intelligence. And I've been successful in creating a niche for myself where I've created this guide, this template, this process that really in some ways is a rational approach to looking at the feelings you currently have. And when they're not helpful, focusing on those feelings, understanding a little bit about the context, but using problem-solving methodology to focus on how do you change the feelings you have to feelings that are much more beneficial and useful for whatever it is you're trying to get done. And what I wanted to do, and why I came on the radio some 10 years ago, was to provide this information to all of you that are out there listening now, today, in order to help guide you to use this concept of an emotion roadmap in your own life. So you don't have to be the caller to learn how to use this. The idea of when someone calls and I'm able to help them, and I'm able to talk with them and understand the context of their situation, what they're facing that is challenging them. When I'm able to help someone work through in their own mind some potential options for how to deal more successfully than they're currently able to do with the situation that they're facing, everybody's learning, because I take you through the process. I don't just do it. I explain what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and hopefully have been helpful to the person who calls in. At the same time, I'm hoping to help all of you who might be listening to me. So let me give you the phone number to call in case you've got something and you're a regular listener, you wanted me back on the air so you could call. The number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. One more time. 203-336-9756. And again, what might you call about? Lots of different things. One of my good friends recently was diagnosed with cancer, and I was talking to him today about how do you take the wheel and control how you feel. Cancer's, it's a horrible diagnosis, especially when you hear that there really is no cure. All there's the ability to try and manage it. What that does to people is it forces them to focus on everyday life in ways that most of us don't pay attention to, because they don't know how many days they have left. None of us really know that, right? I mean, all of us die. We just don't know when, and we're not thinking about it. But when we get a diagnosis that says we have cancer, we're thinking about it. It changes everything, and it forces us to focus on how do we stay as healthy as possible. How do we appreciate and enjoy moments that normally might slip by without us paying attention? What kind of things do we want to do that we always have talked about but never did, that we now know that we don't have unlimited time, and so we choose to do them now? There's lots of things that can impact people that in different ways, whether it's something you're dealing with as an individual within yourself or it's something with another person. And so if you've got something going on for you that has something to do with you personally or someone you know, and you're trying to figure out how to help them, again, my experience is if you're a good critical thinker and if you're a typically excellent problem solver, which of course is all the people who listen to the show, if you're stuck, it's almost always because something emotional is happening. And by focusing with this emotion roadmap on what's going on emotionally for you and what's going on emotionally, at least your best guess about what's happening emotionally for another person or several key people that you're dealing with, if we can try and look at that and think about what would be better to feel, more ideal to feel for you and for the others. It feels like magic sometimes, folks, how the way options appear that were not available before we did this kind of intensive focus on emotions. So again, I'll give you the number, 203-336-9756. And again, you're listening to Chuck Wolf. The show is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'll give you a minute to call. And if not, again, if you're a regular listener, I always bring topics to talk about in case I don't get phone calls. Sometimes I get a rash of phone calls, but they're way at the end of the show. I'm on for an hour. I'm on 12 to 1 p.m. on the first and second Wednesdays of the month. And sometimes I do interviews, as I did last week. Last week was an interview. I didn't have phone calls because I had this, I thought, really interesting and exciting conversation with Judith McLaughlin. I have another one coming up in the first week in December about trust with another friend and colleague, another professor actually. But first, let me give you a chance to call. Again, I'll give you the number a couple times, and I'll just wait a moment to see if you've got something. It's better to call in the beginning of the show. It's a little, it's funny. It's when one person calls, other people feel like it's easier to call after that. So it's a little hard to break the ice sometimes. But if you've got something, you're better calling now while I've got time to talk with you rather than at the very end of the show when I might run out of time. And again, the show's on from 12 to 1 p.m. The number to call is 203-336-9756. Sometimes I talk fast, and I was got a call one time from a person who said, this is the first time I was able to write down the number that you told me about. She said, I'm older and I don't always catch everything that you're saying, but if you slow the number down, that's easier for me. And so here's my first call. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck. I think I'd rather not say my name.
Well, can I call you Bob just so we get something to work with?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thanks. Go ahead, Bob.
Thanks. So I've been dealing with something with family issues for about 15 years, and it's really come to a head lately. And it's been probably the most difficult thing I've ever had the opportunity to deal with in my life. I was married. I had a daughter, and then we divorced, and then there's been problems with the marriage, and a lot of those problems have affected my daughter and have affected the relationship. Um, in a nutshell, my ex-wife was very abused as a child and badly abused. She had a brother and sister who were never actually able to have an adult relationship up into their 40s. They had never, her brother or sister had never had a real relationship with a a loving relationship ever. She was my ex-wife was sort of the one that was able to sort of have a relationship, even though it was very hard for her. While we were in a marriage, she would sort of project on me the fears of and whatever whatever happened to her as a child, she would become fearful of me, as if I was going to sort of replicate that behavior in a man that was with her when she was younger. And I was very reasonable and safe for her to be with, super nice, super loving, super caring, and good communicator, and was able to really calm her down and talk her down and be that sort of balance that she so badly needed in being a male figure in her life that was actually safe and loving and all the things you'd want in a partner. And what happened was, when we separated, and I ended up divorcing her because it got very unhealthy to be with her, because her fears and anxieties just built. It got more and more and more, and sort of got out of control. And she was afraid that I was going to jump out of the closet and murder her with an axe. I would come home from work, and she would be afraid to have me in the house with her, because her fears and anxieties started getting the best of her. And it got to a point where I really couldn't talk her down so well anymore. And it just got to be too much. And we ended up, through the end of our relationship, we ended up having a child together, and then we got divorced. And what's happened since we've got divorced is she has as soon as her balance wasn't in front of her anymore, to help talk her down and help talk and bring her back to reality and give her a basis for sort of normal functioning. As soon as I wasn't in front of her, she threw all her fears, anxieties, and trauma from her childhood on me, and treated me as if I was the offender and she was the victim. And the problem, if we didn't have a kid, that wouldn't really matter, because I would just be on my merry way, and she would have to deal with herself. But the problem is that we have a daughter together, and she has directly and indirectly influenced my daughter in such a way where my daughter has been literally very afraid of me and untrusting of me and fearful, and to the point where now she's going to be turning 13 at the beginning of next year. And normally, court order visitation is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now my court order, I haven't seen my daughter for 5 months, because my daughter doesn't want to see me, and my mom was just visiting. She doesn't want to see her grandmother. My ex-wife is turning my daughter's phone off to everybody in my side of the family. So nobody can reach out to her. Nobody can talk to her. Even my aunt and my mom and my sister, all their phones have been blocked. So nobody can really reach out, that's what's happening. And it's been incredibly difficult for me on many levels, but mostly having a daughter who, your kids become your number one sort of purpose in life and the most important thing to you. And the struggle of having a child that acts on the surface, because they're acting like a traumatized person. On the surface, they're acting like everything's fine, but underneath, they're scared of you. They don't trust you. They don't want to be there. And I'm actually a pretty great guy. My friends would agree with that. My family thinks I'm a pretty great guy. I'm certainly a terrific dad, and to have this experience where I have, in all other accounts, is a very normal kid, have this very strained and hard, torn apart relationship with my daughter is has been the hardest thing emotionally that I've ever dealt with. And lately, my daughter is telling, her mother that she doesn't want to see me anymore. And instead of her mother going, listen, if you have a problem with your dad, I'm dropping you off there tomorrow morning, you got to work it out with your dad. Like, that's something that I can't do because it's your relationship with your dad. You have to work that out. But that's not where the psychology and where everything is springing from. So my ex-wife, instead of being supportive, is like, oh, well, what's going on? There's problems. I mean, she was worried that I was going to jump out of the closet and murder her with an axe. I can just imagine what she's worried about of me doing with our daughter. So
Right.
instead of being supportive of a relationship with me, she's like, oh my God, what's going on? I want to protect you. So she goes into full-blown panic, fear, anxiety from her trauma as a child that she's already put all over Lily, and Lily's just sort of growing up in that. And bang.
Got it.
I don't see her for 5 months, and she's absolutely just, instead of supporting a relationship, she's doing the opposite, which is what she's been doing all along and why our daughter feels this way in the first place. So anyways, that's the situation. It's, I've sort of gotten to the point where I've done everything I could to provide the balance for my daughter, which I don't think she gets from her mother. Provide stability, provide a healthy viewpoint on the world, provide a healthy relationship with me, and hoping that over the years my daughter would find a balance and see the balance and find a value in our relationship and find that she can trust me, that even though, she doesn't know why she doesn't even know why she's afraid, but she certainly doesn't feel like she can trust me. She's terrified of me. She's scared. She can't trust me. She feels uncomfortable when she's around me. She doesn't really know why, because she doesn't understand the psychology that her mother has and the trauma that her mother has and how that manifests itself in their relationship.
Okay, let me stop you because I think I got
Yep.
it. And I, first of all, I feel, I'm very sad for you because it's obviously something that's pretty distressing, and there is no short-term solution to this. That's clear. And I just want to let me take a moment just to kind of summarize what I heard, and also talk a little bit about the way that this show works and how potentially I might be able to at least help you frame this a bit differently.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that the show works is, first of all, is to try and understand the context. So the context is you married someone who had been abused as a child, who in that family seemed like she was capable of a normal relationship, but wasn't. Does that kind of sound correct?
Yeah. I mean, pretty normal except for the trauma from the abuse. Other than that, pretty great.
Right. And then she became panic-stricken and fearful of you becoming this other person that she fantasized was somehow related to what her experiences as a kid were, but maybe, changed over the years. But nevertheless, something that she fantasized about that scared the daylights out of her and became, an unbearable circumstance for you, so you had to leave.
Yeah.
Okay. And then she has changed the way the daughter felt about you and how she's doing it, and we don't know exactly what she's saying, but she has demonstrated her lack of interest in any relationship with your daughter and any part of your family by shutting off the phones and so forth. So I got that too. And your daughter has now expressed a disinterest in seeing you. Now, so some of the typical things that people normally think about when they hear a problem like this is to try and offer you solutions. But that's not what this is about, this show, because I'm assuming that every possible obvious solution is something you've already thought about and tried. So let me just ask you that, though, because that's partly in trying to help somebody. You want to understand what they've already tried to do. So I assume that you've looked into things like, could I have custody? I mean, maybe you have or haven't, but that's a possibility, right? Given what's going on with my daughter and the circumstance and the shutting of the phones, would you have any kind of legal right, have you explored that, for the daughter to live with you? Is that at all a possibility? Have you explored that?
Well, the sad truth is this has been my daughter's 12 now. This has been 12 years of some very, very deep-seated brokenness from her mother around this. So when I separated from from her mother. Her mother, within about 3 to 4 years, just started trumping, because she was saying a lot of things, but nobody was really listening to her. Like, oh, that I was neglectful, that I was abusive, that I was this, that I was that. She never really got any traction because nobody believed it. But then she decided to go all guns blazing, and she didn't want me to have any relationship with our daughter because she was terrified that I was going to abuse, because in her mind, she's scapegoated, she's projecting her fears and anxieties onto the other men in her world. And I was man number one, being her ex-husband and being the father of our child. So she threw everything she could think of that DCF would allow you to throw at me. So I was investigated by the police several times, put through, you wouldn't believe, I don't know, maybe you would, because I don't know if you know the system or not. I never knew the system. I didn't know anybody in the system. Nobody in my family had been in the system. But I ended up jumping through every hoop that I think is possibly imaginable. And all those charges got dropped because there was no evidence. But it doesn't, as you probably know, if you make the charges, you're guilty sort of until proven innocent, because the system, if DCF knows there's a potential predator, they have to separate the kids, because otherwise if something else happens in the future, they would be liable. So I got treated very much like it was the false accusations were real, and my ex-wife was just using them as tactics. So
let me stop you again.
To answer your question, through that process, I lost joint custody.
Okay, so so how do you have do you have rights to see her? You don't have rights to see her anymore.
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry, that was a long roundabout way to answer your question.
And the last point is, did you when your daughter was born, was that immediately when you left your wife? In other words,
no.
How long?
A year and a half.
So you were
a year and a half after that.
But the daughter doesn't really remember you being a part of the family.
Correct.
Okay. Have you had any good experiences with her over the years? Is there anything for the daughter to somehow at some point reflect on that she remembers being with Dad and it was a good time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Tons. Okay. So there is a history that at some point she's not being allowed, because of her mother's presence, to think about or to act on, but she has some history that's in her past. To what point would you say it was good, and when did it turn for you? For her? It
was okay. So there's two things happening. My daughter sort of developed this coping mechanism with her own. So she sort of grew up in an environment with deep fear and anxiety of me and of men, and mostly oriented and focused on me. So she grew up with that. That's her environment. She's taken that on as being a reality, not knowing that that's just a product of her mom's abuse as a child. And so on the surface, it looks like she's having a great time with me when we're doing whatever we're doing, whether we're hanging out in the fire pit with friends in the backyard, whether we're going to an amusement park, whether we're visiting friends or family, or going on little mini overnights or whatever. It seems like she's having a great time. Underneath that, she doesn't want to be there. She's scared. She doesn't trust me. She's waiting for the other foot to fall. She's waiting for the nightmare to start.
Okay.
So for her to remember to a time where there was good times, that isn't really, I don't know. She's not remembering that. She doesn't see the good times. She only is, all she is doing is when she's with me, and nobody would know that. I know this. She knows this. My immediate family knows this, but my friends who are good friends don't. Her godfather, who knows my ex-wife and who has been part of this whole time, he kind of sees half of it. He kind of sees it, but it's still even hard for him to see. All she's doing, we could be at a water park having a great time, and all she's doing is doing damage control. What can I be doing right now to protect myself from the inevitable nightmare?
Okay.
And so psychologically, that's what she's always doing. So is she really able to really connect and enjoy the good times? Not really.
Can I ask you excuse me, Bob, can I ask you if you've seen a therapist about this? Because you've got some pent-up stuff about this, too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And can you share any advice maybe in terms of how they've suggested you deal with this?
I mean, the basic advice is, at this point, is you're going to have to let it go. And it's unhealthy for whatever reason. It's unhealthy for her to be with you. And even though it's twisted, it's sad, it's terrible, that is the case. And let her know that when she's ready, you're available and 100% there for her. But she's going to have. But the advice is basically, you're dealing with somebody who she is going to have to be the person to want to reconnect and want to have a relationship with you.
And is that advice something that you're not accepting at this point? Is that why you made the phone call?
No, I'm going through the process of accepting it. It's really, really hard. I mean, this has been through all the DCF lies and the horrible, horrible tactics that my ex-wife has employed to try to, I'm using air quotes here, to protect her daughter from, a horrible predator, which was never the case. I've had people tell me, listen, it's not worth it. Just let her go. She'll come back one day. And I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to do it. I've always wanted to be, trying, like you were saying, try everything to try to change the tide, to try to help my daughter have a breakthrough where she can see me as somebody she's not afraid of all the time. And so I've tried that for 12 years. And obviously, what's interesting to me now, in hindsight, that I'm kind of seeing is I kind of approached my relationship with my daughter very similar to my relationship with my ex-wife, which was I said to my ex-wife, listen, she's got these fears, she's got these unfounded anxieties and fears that come from her past. I can help her. I can be the one who's grounded, the one who's reasonable, the one who can talk her down. In the long run, as partners, I am helping her. As soon as I left, I realized I didn't help her at all. And I'm sort of feeling like now in hindsight that I've sort of been doing the same thing with my daughter for the last 12 years, which is being grounded, being healthy relationship, being everything to have her kind of be able to foster that within herself, and it hasn't worked at all. So that's kind of interesting.
Okay, so how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling really horrible about losing a relationship with my daughter, who is the most important person and thing in my world. I feel horrible about that. I think there's a fantastic range of emotions that go with that.
Let me stop you with horrible, and then let me just ask you, how do you want to feel about it?
I'd like to feel less guilty, because I feel like, if I'd only tried harder, maybe I could have said something or done something that would have changed the tide and get through to her and break through to her.
So let me make a suggestion about what I think you might want to feel that would be useful. One is accepting of the situation, accepting of your own role in it, not being, the guilty part of it is another part of feeling horrible. That's one of the descriptors maybe of horrible, is guilty.
Yeah.
And so somehow you want to let go of the guilt and let go of the need for a relationship today, because it isn't going to happen. I mean, and that's what your therapist told you, it sounds like, and I think probably the therapist is right. It's not going to. It's not going to happen now. If it does happen, right. I mean, here's the future state potentially is that at some point your daughter says, you know what, I get that mom is scared to death of dad, and that she has some fears from her own background and psychological issues with her own dad, but at some point your daughter's going to recognize, but my dad never did any of that stuff. But that's a long time away. It's not something you're ever going to see soon. And so that's what I mean. The idea of being accepting is the key here, that the situation's lousy. There's no question about that. And, nobody who's listening to you out there in radio land is feeling anything but sympathy and empathy for you, because it seems so unfair. And life is unfair lots of times. And there's not much you can do about it. But it seems to me that the more you try to engage your daughter, the more fearful she's going to be at this time. And yet, somehow, if it was me and I was in your shoes, and my recommendation for a strategy to be more accepting is to periodically just, if there's some way to communicate, maybe there isn't even at this point, but to send a card, just to say I'm still, at some point I'd still like to be able to be with you, but only when you're ready and only when you want it, and somehow communicate that message. Because I think pushing on this only aggravates the situation. no matter how you push, no matter how gentle and diplomatic and thoughtful and supportive you're trying to be, I don't know that it'll be seen that way, because it's colored by your wife, who's still obviously going to be very much in your daughter's life for the next few years. It's colored by all the crazy stuff that she told the DCF about you. And it's colored by the fears that the daughter's picking up from her mom. So I don't know how you influence that now, except to always be there and for her to know that at some point when she's ready, you want to have a relationship, a wonderful relationship, because you love her.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm sort of vacillating between. I'm having a hard time getting there because, you know, it involves letting go, and it involves letting go of something that's the most important thing to me in my life. So that's the hard part. But I do agree, and there's a lot. You know, I do absolutely agree with the wisdom of what you're saying, which is I do have to accept it, and I have to let it go, and I'm here for her, and when she's ready, you know, I mean that place of acceptance is.
That's kind of key to it, but let me change the way you're framing it, because that's key here. In other words, for me to say this to you, the strategy and the emotion roadmap works like this. For you to move from the horrible feelings you're having to being accepting of the situation, you need a strategy that you're able and willing to do. And if you feel like it's letting go of something that's incredibly precious to you, you're not really willing to do that yet. I mean, if we're being honest, I don't think you are. But let me suggest reframing it, because I don't think it's about letting go, and you do. And let me tell you why I don't think that's the way you want to think about this, because I don't think you are letting go. I think as long as you're committed to, at some point in your life, in your daughter's life, that there will be a wonderful relationship. And it might take 5 years or 10 years. But as long as you're committed, you never let go. You really don't. It's more about just, you have to have the patience of Job, really, you know, where there's stuff that's going to happen for a long time, and it's going to aggravate you, and they're going to continue to want to pull you in the direction of feeling guilty and horrible and all those feelings. And you want to somehow get a step above that and be uplifted with the idea that I'm never going to give up on my relationship with my daughter. I just, unfortunately, because of the person I chose to marry, and because I thought I could be helpful to that woman, and for a while I thought it was working, but it didn't. And that's something that failed, and I get that. But I'm not going to allow it to fail with my daughter. I think at some point I'm committed, and it might be years from now, but I'm committed that at some point we're going to have a wonderful relationship, and that's what you want to carry around inside.
Oh, that's nice.
And that makes, I mean, if you can really frame it that way, I think everything changes for you.
Yeah.
Because you're not letting go. I mean, if you're worried about letting go, you'll never be able to get past these feelings. But if you understand that this is, I need the patience of Job here, and it's going to be years, and maybe it won't be as many years as you might think, but you don't know. But if somehow in the few opportunities you might have to communicate with your daughter, you just continue to let her know that you're there for her when she's ready, and at some point you'd love to have a wonderful relationship with her because you love her.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, it is hard to let go if you think you're actually letting go forever, and I'm not doing that. I can't wrap my head. I mean, that's just not even possible. So, yeah, it's just accepting where it's at now, and yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in everything you're saying. I appreciate it.
And that your commitment to yourself and to your daughter is that at some point we're going to have the relationship I want with you,
yeah.
and that you're going to want with me.
Yep.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So that's how the show works, folks. It's the idea of trying to understand what are the emotions that are in play. Bob's situation is complicated. It's sad. It's upsetting, and it's long term. There's not an easy fix, but if you can frame it the way we talked about it, it changes the whole dynamic. And if your commitment is real and you really want to make sure that happens at some point, it may be many years from now, but if you never let go, as opposed to having to let go, if you never let go of the idea that you want a wonderful relationship, only when the time is right and when your daughter has some chance to break away from the situation where she's very dependent on the mom right now. So anyway, if you want to call in, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a moment to call if you like. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Oh, I wanted to thank you for the phone call that you just had with that guy. I've had the same experience with DCF and how they attacked my family and not being able, it's been 4 years, and not being able to let go. But, I mean, and I've seen psychiatrists jump through all the hoops, everything. It comes good family. And I'm just so, and the lies that they make up is unreal. I mean, I think everybody, I'm in my neighbor's driveway right now, and we're about to go out, and I'm like, but thank you so much for how you put that, because I have not been able to let go. It's been almost 4 years. So, and that makes sense. It's just, being there for in the future. So I just wanted to thank you for that phone call. It meant a lot to me.
Thanks for calling in, and I really appreciate it. And if that was helpful to you, that's the whole nature and the reason for the show. So I appreciate you calling in.
Incredibly helpful.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's the concept, folks. So if you're listening, or you know people that might want to benefit from listening, give me let them know that the show's on the first and second Wednesdays of the month from 12 to 1 p.m. You're listening to Chuck Wolf, and this is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I know, by the way, there was another caller that just called in, and in the show, we're a community radio station that benefits immensely from your support when you can volunteer time and your money to help keep us afloat. So I'm by myself in the studio running my program. So if I get a second phone call when I'm talking to someone, I can't take it. And so if you were just calling and wondered why nobody picked up, it's because I can't stop the initial phone call. I've got, when I'm talking to somebody, to pick up another line without breaking the flow of the conversation. So apologize to you. If you want to call back, I'll give you the number again, 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll wait a moment and give you a chance to call back if you like. Well, perhaps somebody will call back in a little while. Talk to you a little bit about, again, sometimes, if I don't get phone calls, I like to have topics that I want to talk about. And I just want to tell you a little bit about a show that's coming up in a month, in December. First week in December. I'm going to be interviewing a woman that I've known for a while. Her name is Michelle Williams. And the conversation is going to be about trust. Obviously, the last phone call and many relationship issues focus around trust. If you haven't really thought about the issue of trust impacts so much in life. It impacts our families. It impacts our workplaces. When you have trust with one another, life is so much easier to manage. When you're distrusting, when you're fearful, when you're afraid of something going wrong in the relationship or of the person or people that you might work for or live with, these are all problems that can be dealt with by understanding the role of trust. Well, I've got another phone caller. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck. This is Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for the call. How can I help you?
No problem. I listen all the time, by the way.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to offer words of hope to your first caller.
Sure.
It took me 7 years.
Yeah.
But patience
Go ahead.
of Job is exactly the way to go, and accept where you are, and it will work out. It will work out.
Thank you. So you've had some experiences that sounded something similar to what the other
Yeah,
caller...
it was kind of the opposite of his, but yes.
Okay.
The kid was living with me, but the father was poisoning her brain.
Interesting. Okay.
But over time, and by the way, in that same time frame, I was able to improve, not immensely, but improve my relationship with my ex. So patience, love, and wait.
So that also echoed for you in terms of something that's not quite the same, but had some resemblance enough that you wanted to call. And I appreciate the call, Suzanne.
Right.
And thank you.
I wanted him to have the hope that it will happen.
Oh, that's great to know. And thank you so much for listening regularly. I appreciate that too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye bye now.
Bye-bye.
Again, so if you want to call in and you got something you'd like to say, either in support of the caller or something of your own that you'd like to share, the number to call is 203-336-9756. And if you're thinking about calling, I'd say this is the time now because it's 12:44, and the show ends in about 10 minutes because I put on a public message at the end of the show for the last 5 minutes. So I've got 10 minutes if you want to call in. So it's going to be a while before I'm back on the air. So if you got something, give me a call now. I'll wait and give you a moment. If not, I got plenty to talk about, everybody. But I always like to make sure if listeners got something they'd like to share, that they have the opportunity. So the number's 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hello?
Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to?
Hey, Chuck. I just want to tell you that I really appreciate you bringing forth so much valuable information on things that, well, I, as a guy, really didn't know that much about. Even, instinctively, I'm hearing it, and it resonates, but it's different than the way I used to, view things. And it's nice getting somebody else's more sensitive point of view.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I want to wish you and your listeners a very happy Thanksgiving. And I think that emotionally, we tend to dwell upon things that either didn't go well. I know myself, I tend to replay scenes over again, conversations I had years ago or things that people said to me, and, just forgetting all about the good stuff. So this is a season of Thanksgiving. We've got a lot to be grateful, especially within the cognitive, emotional process of learning to drop the stuff that doesn't quite matter anymore and try to be a more effective communicator in the present.
That's a lovely message, and thank you so much for listening and for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. God bless you and yours, Chuck. Take care.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the call. You take care, too. Bye-bye now. Well, that's a lot of nice compliments for the show and what we talk about here. I guess one of the ways that you might share how you feel about the show with other people. The reason I do the show is because over the years I feel pretty blessed in my life with a wonderful wife, and I have 3 lovely daughters, and they're all married, and a couple of them have children, and we've got great grandkids. And so part of my wanting to share with you is I've had some great experiences. I've been blessed in my own life. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of struggles on the way up, but I've learned a lot, and I've been privileged in the opportunities I've had in terms of where I've gone, who I've met, who I've learned from. And I want to share that. To me, it's the Emotion Roadmap isn't just a tool for helping you get through a particularly challenging moment. It's a tool for life. The idea I have about it is that if you think about what it takes to create inner peace, and if more people were experiencing inner peace, I think the idea of world peace isn't so foreign. And one of the ways that you create inner peace, I think, is by helping you understand how you deal with the emotional stuff in your life. And so for me, part of the reason I'm so attracted to doing this is I struggle with my own emotions. I want to be clear about that. Part of what I've learned is, there's an old joke about why do people go into psychology? It's because they're desperate to find out what other people do to fix some of the things going on inside of them. Well, for me, some of that's true. I mean, there's some things that I've learned about myself that there are places in my life where I struggle emotionally, but I've learned from this emotion roadmap that I created with the help of others that I can control how I feel much more effectively than ever before. That doesn't mean I'm in total control, and it doesn't mean I don't slip up, make mistakes. We all do. We're all human. Nobody's perfect. But you shoot for being the best you can be, right? And you also have to accept that being perfect isn't really the goal. What's the goal is to work towards perfection. You're never going to be perfect, and if that's your goal, you're always going to be disappointed. But if you continue to work at being better, at dealing with your own things in life, and helping others to deal more effectively, then that feeling of inner peace starts to build. And that self-confidence that you can tackle challenging situations, even those that involve strong emotions. So my goal here was that I still get paid very handsomely to go out and do speaking engagements for people or work with executives in senior companies or leaders in nonprofits as a coach. I mean, I love doing the work. I'm good at it, and I like helping people. But I also know that a lot of people can't afford to pay the value that I might bring. But I thought the idea of going on the radio allows everybody who wants to take an hour out of their day a couple times a month to learn how to do these things. And, well, it's not free, not because I'm getting paid, because everybody that is a programmer here is a volunteer. And so the cost of this radio station, there's overhead and there's expenses and there's a few staff that that need to be paid in order to make all this work. So your donations are extremely valuable, but beyond donations, people sometimes don't have money, but they have time to share, and it's great to have volunteers be a part of the WPKN community. So I'm really appreciative of WPKN allowing me to be on the air, and also for the lovely phone calls that so many of you shared this morning about how much you appreciate the show and the insights that I bring. So I want to thank the caller and then all of you that have responded so nicely to share your feelings about the show and your support for the caller. It is a community radio station, and I believe that we are exercising our ability to support one another as a community. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. I just got a couple minutes. I'm not going to ask for another call because I know that Richard Epstein's here. He's coming on next, and I want to be on time so that when I'm ready to when the show's over at 1:55, I want to clear out. So I got a couple minutes. So let me tell you a couple of things that I just want to share with you. I think I mentioned, for those of you that listen regularly, that the show is on YouTube. And so if you want to see me on YouTube and some of the other shows I've done, you go to Simsbury TV, Simsbury, Simsbury. It's in town in Connecticut. And the programming manager there asked me one time if I'd be willing to film my radio show and put it on the air in my hometown. But she not only puts it on the air for my hometown to see, but anybody that wants to see this show, I'm not sure why you'd want to see me live while I'm doing the show, but I know that there are other shows on TV that are videotaped and put on television. So maybe you'd enjoy seeing me do the show. And you actually can do that by going to Simsbury TV on YouTube and then looking up Emotion Roadmap. And then you'll see my show. Many of them anyway. And so... But one of the things that I wanted to share is that in doing the show, I really want to make sure that we're communicating in a way that we share not only our own stories and help people, but just other stories that I think help generate what I think are positive role models. So if you're a regular listener, you may have heard me talk about a serious conflict in the world today. And I was kidding in the sense about it because I was talking not about the Kavanaugh hearings at the time or other things that were going on in politics, but I was actually talking about the Yankees and the Red Sox rivalry because the Red Sox had just beaten the Yankees to move on to play against the Houston Astros. And anybody that pays attention to baseball knows that the Red Sox went on to win the World Series. But something, and I talked about at the time after the Red Sox had beaten the Yankees, about this trust factor, the confidence that Alex Cora, the new manager for the Red Sox, seemed to bring to the team that I've never seen the like in a way that he's related so well to his players. Now, it's 1 year, and I don't know if I'll do it again. But then I heard a couple of things I thought that were worth sharing, just to have you understand. Sometimes, what some people are like who rise to high levels. So here's Alex Cora, who's the first Puerto Rican ever to manage in the major leagues. He's a first-time manager, and he's being, before he got to manage, this is the story I want to tell you, he was being interviewed by the Red Sox. And when it looked like they wanted him, and he felt that he could ask for what he wanted in the deal, he said to them, and this is a great story, I think, he said, I'm not interested in talking about money or new cars or anything like that. What I'd like you to do is, because this hurricane just happened in Puerto Rico and in my hometown, I'd like you to supply 3 planes full of materials and goods that I can bring to Puerto Rico and have you support that. That's what's important to me. And then the Red Sox did it, and he went out there with a few members of the team and some of the staff from the Red Sox, and they delivered it. And then at the end, when he won the World Series, he stood up on stage without asking anybody. He held up that World Series trophy, and he said, I haven't asked anybody yet, but we're bringing this to Puerto Rico. He didn't ask for permission. He just said, we're doing it. And they supported them, of course. So anyway, I've got if you're watching me on TV, the hat I'm wearing is a Red Sox cap in honor of that wonderful championship. But it's also a cap that was paid and bought for as part of a donation to the Jimmy Fund. And as I thought about it, and I mentioned earlier in the show, if you can find any way to support people, charities that help people to deal with illness, more power to you. It's one of those ways of taking the wheel and controlling how you feel, and it's a good thing if you can support others in any way that you can, either with your time, your money, or energy. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to WPKN, the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.